Okay, well, it looks like we're all here, so if we could call the meeting to order. Welcome to the joint meeting of Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. If I could please have our city clerk call roll call, please.
Councilmember Deloso.
Here.
Councilmember Harvey.
Here.
Councilmember Landman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Moore.
Here.
Mayor Skillman.
Here, thank you. All right, well, if you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And we'll move on to item 4, approval of minutes, and waiving the reading of all resolutions and ordinances for our regular meeting on June 23rd.
Move to approve. This is Councilmember Harvey.
Now second, this is Councilmember Deloso.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If we could get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Deloso.
Yes.
Councilmember Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Landman.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Mayor Skillman.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item number 5, which is announcements. Meeting orientation for new attendees or viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council will consider the item and citizens are afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizen's business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. The City Council may or may not choose to respond to comments as the government code allows. However, if the City Council declines to respond, it should not be perceived as giving credence to or agreeing with any statements that the City Council or its members believe are incorrect, misinformed, or purposefully biased. Measure G supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. Please see details on the web at cotaticity.org. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at nixle.com or by texting your zip code 94931 to 888-777. It is our top priority to provide you with prompt and comprehensive customer service, and we continue to offer all city services. However, in the interest of public health, City Hall is currently closed to walk-in traffic due to the current health officer order. During this time, our services have temporarily transitioned to phone and web-based, as well as appointments by request. Staff continue to be available to answer your questions 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., Monday through Thursday. And like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotaticity.org. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, Nixle, and Nextdoor. Now we'll move on to item number 6, presentations. I understand we have a presentation on the July 2020 financial update, and for that we will turn to Angela Corder.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members and fellow members of the public. We'll get the presentation up and get it going. So at our last council meeting on June 23rd, we adopted our fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, as well as the estimated balances for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, based on those projections at the time of both revenues and expenditures as reasonably as possibly estimated during these very tenuous times. During the presentation of the budget summary, we also committed to council and to the public to come back with timely updates of significant revenues. So directly subsequent to the meeting, the very next day, I believe, we received our sales tax and voter-approved local revenue payment from the CDTFA. And so we wanted to report out to you those updates from that receipt, as well as the unadjusted cash and investments as of the beginning of July. So our general fund is the fund that provides most of the non-enterprise type city services. This is where the main operations for recreation, public works, administrative services, community development, economic development, public safety, infrastructure, council, city manager's office. This is all where we provide these services from. We'd like to provide this graph as a snapshot of the revenue sources that fund those services. Overall, sales tax and property tax account for 78.7% of these revenues. And with that, the voter-approved revenue measure alone makes up 28.35% of our revenues. This just shows how vital sales tax are to the city, and why we're so supportive of our local businesses, and why we'll continue to monitor the effects of COVID-19 on these businesses. So our sales tax and voter-approved local revenues update. So this is just a reminder that payments are made to the city by the CDTFA approximately 2 months after the period of those sales tax. So the sales tax receipts for April were received by the city in June, and the sales tax receipts for June will not be received until August. So with that said, the sales taxes that we adopted a budget for, it was an approximate budget estimate of $1.9 million. And that was as of June. So as of June, which again was the receipts through April, we'd received $1.8 million, which leaves us a difference of $114,000 approximately. So with this, if the sales tax receipts for May and June are consistent, then we would have approximately $209,000 worth of receipts, which were in excess of our budget. Consistent with the sales tax, the voter-approved local revenues, we conservatively adopted a budget of approximately $2.1 million, and as of June, we'd received just over $2 million, leaving a difference of $79,000 of collections still needed to meet budget. So with this, if the receipts for May and June are consistent, we would have approximately $286,000 in receipts in excess of budget. So combined, that total does get us to that $492,000 in excess of what our conservative budget is. But again, these are different times. So I want to talk briefly about where those estimates came from, why the payments in April were higher than anticipated for our budget, and then what we're kind of seeing and getting information on as we continue to move forward. So the estimates. So the budget was set on estimates. We continue to work with the team at HDL to understand and track these estimates against our actuals. So what caused the difference between where we budgeted? Well, it's primarily due to the increase in the county pools as we were expecting. We wanted to be conservative, but the county pool continues to exceed our expectations due to the increased online sales, retail sales, as well as our conservative calculations we had on COVID-19 and the projections for more businesses we expected to take a deferment plan offered by the state. So in total, we had missing payments of approximately $140,000 for the first quarter of 2020, and it's approximately 50% less than what we were anticipating. The projections as previously provided show a possible combined balance in excess of $492,000. But again, this is assuming that everything stays the same with April, and that those same payments that we received for April and June are consistent. But we know that's not the case now, and with the latest round of shutdowns, there's again a significant amount of uncertainty if there will be more businesses opting to postpone payments or start payment plans. And again, this is a lagging number. There are many ups and downs that have happened since April. Just today, we received an important message from the CDTFA that the second quarter 2020 April sales advance that we're discussing right now has resulted in a lower tax receipts due to COVID-19. So statewide, the overall total payments for June 2020 decreased by 13% compared to the June 2019 payment. And the overall payment decrease is not reflective of every jurisdiction, but again, it's just an average across the state, and so they wanted to push out that information to the local jurisdictions so they can adjust accordingly. Other contributing factors relating to the difference between the estimates were the fact that we did reopen for business sooner than anticipated, which now again is probably going to be adjusted. On top of that, we do have a specific mix of businesses here in Cotati. Some of our main sales tax contributors here in the city were identified as essential, like home improvement and food and drug. And as such, they were able to remain open and even showed economic improvements during the first part of the shutdown, as more people were spending more time working at home and took on those home improvement projects that they had been postponing, as well as taking the time to cook at home. So I just wanted to end with a quick snapshot of another key information that we're tracking, which is our total cash and investments balances. In order for a city to remain functioning and efficient, we have to not only manage our inflows, but also make sure we're managing the cash on hand and proper investment of those resources. The city, as of July 2nd, had over $17.4 million in combined funds, of which over 90% was invested according to our investment policy in order to earn those reasonable returns. And again, at the beginning of this presentation, I did mention that this is the unadjusted cash, and that unadjusted balance means that we don't have those final investment statements from either RBC, from our SCIP account or our LEAF account, in order to adjust those slightly for any interest income that we've earned or fees that were assessed, so that we do anticipate slight adjustments for gains and losses on these accounts. That's the end of my presentation, so I'll take any questions or comments you might have.
Okay, Angela, thank you very much for the presentation. So first I will bring it to council, see if there were any questions or comments on the presentation. All right, I see Councilmember Delasso, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Skillman. Angela, I just want to say that it's good news where we are, and I think in part not only to your guys' diligent work and admin services and the rest of the departments, but really the conservative estimates of tax revenues that were coming in, and I think that's always the wise way to go, especially in the financial situation and that we find ourselves in right now. So I just want to thank you for that update. And can I assume we're going to get these kind of regular updates? Do you think they might be either monthly or every other month?
I plan on providing these updates monthly until we are on more stable footing.
That's excellent. Great. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, and I see Councilmember Harvey has her hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember Harvey.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela, for the presentation. I was going to ask the same question John asked, so I'm glad to hear that we're going to get frequent updates because, as you point out, this is kind of a volatile situation at this point, and I think it's important for us to watch it a lot closer than we, normally would do. So, great presentation, and thank you for that, and hope we can stay on this trajectory.
Okay, and then I see Councilmember Landman. Go ahead, Councilmember Landman.
Thank you, Mayor Skillman. Thank you. So, Angela, just helping us understand this really almost incomprehensible situation that we're all living in now. So far, it seems like for April, we're sitting at about 95.2%, let's call it 95% compared to last year. The state's sharing with us looking at something like 13% below, at least statewide for June. So that at least for these few months, until we hit July, which will probably change a lot, that's kind of where we're living. Is that a fair way to describe what we're seeing?
Yes. So it does depend really on those businesses deciding to go on payment plans or deferral plans and when those take effect.
Right. So bottom line, actually, since you've been saying from the beginning, there's not a lot of certainty, and I think it is fair to say there's no certainty, other than the one thing I think we can all say now, that this is unlikely to be a V-shaped recovery. I think we can safely say goodbye to that. But with that, at least so far, I appreciate the clarity of sharing this with us, and I appreciate the regular updates. I think everybody on the council, and I'm sure the community, wants to keep an eye on where this is going, so thank you.
Yes, and I definitely echo that. So thank you very much for the update. And it's great to see that we're not getting any sort of shocking news just because of how conservatively you guys went forward with the prediction of where we might be. So very much appreciate your hard work in putting those estimates together, especially with such uncertain times. So thank you very much for the update. And with that, we'll move on to item 7, approval of the final agenda. I'll just check in with our city manager. Were there any changes to the agenda for tonight?
Good evening, Mayor. No proposed changes.
Okay, fantastic. So we will move on to item number 8, which is citizens' business and public comment for the consent calendar items. So I will read my quick introduction, then I will turn it over to our city clerk. Any members of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matter not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2017-02, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time when a disability accommodation has been requested. And with that, I will turn it over to our city manager, our city clerk, and see whether or not there's anybody who would like to make public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Skillman. And for our attendees tonight, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand via the raise hand icon on your smart device or desktop computer, or dial *9 if you're just using your telephone. Listen carefully for the mayor or myself to address you by name or phone number, and for the audible Zoom notification that you've been unmuted. Once you begin your public comment, your 3 minutes will begin. And with that, Marjorie Crump-Shears, please go ahead.
She is still showing up as muted. If there's anything that we can do on our end.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, good. As the city council, the city manager, and Chief Parrish know, there's a new committee in town, 4. We are the Committee Organized Against Racism. We have met individually with each city council member, with Chief Parrish, with our city manager, to gather information about how our city is run. We want to thank each of you for taking the time to meet with us, for being open, for listening, and for sharing. We look forward to the town hall meeting that's coming up. I believe I saw a date change on the website for that. I could be wrong. So that's a question. Is there a date change? And I want to end with this quote from Indira Gandhi. My grandfather once told me that there are two kinds of people: those who do the work and those who take the credit. He told me to try to be in the first group. There is much less competition. I hope that brought a smile to your face. Our committee is in the first group. Thank you.
Laura Spark, go ahead.
Hello. I was fortunate enough to be able to meet with a few of you throughout the week, and I just wanted to say how grateful I was that you took the time to speak with us. I'm also from the group CORE, Cotati Organized Against Racism, and I just want to say I'm really grateful to live in a town or a city that is so responsive that I can actually get in to talk to my city council members, so that was very special. I also wanted to say that I'm looking forward to the public safety town hall that's coming up, and 3 of my personal priorities that I would like to see change in Cotati in the next months and year are to have a transparent and inclusive process for looking at the police policies, the policy manual. I'd like to see a citizen oversight board established who could look at police use of force issues and complaints, and just take a broader look at what the role of police is in our community and how we might strengthen our mental health services to help take some of the burden off our police force. And last but not least, I really love the new signs that went up in my neighborhood as part of the wayfinding project. They're really spiffy. Thank you so much.
Okay, Mayor Spillman, that will be it for attendees' public comment.
Okay, thank you very much for your public comments. And I was just going to check in with our city manager really quickly to address one of the concerns. Could we get a date for the town hall?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So the date has not changed. It's July 22nd. I think perhaps the question might have arisen from the utility bill mailer. It did say July 22nd, but I think it said Tuesday instead of Wednesday. But the date is July 22nd. That has not changed at 6 p.m.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, and then we will move on to number 9, to consent calendar. Tonight we've got items A, B, C, and D.
Move to approve. This is Councilmember Harvey.
This is Landman. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we please take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Delusso?
Yes.
Councilmember Harvey?
Yes.
Councilmember Landman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Skillman?
Yes, thank you. All right, so we've approved the consent calendar items. Now we'll move on to number 10, direction on future agenda items. So I will check in with council and see if anybody has anything they wanted to bring up at this meeting. I'll wait just a minute just in case. All right, seeing no hands going flying up, I will assume we've got nothing this meeting at least to add to the future agenda items. So we will move on to item 11 on our regular agenda. And this will be a presentation on the community survey that was done. And for that, we will turn to City Manager Obid.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So while Lauren gets the slide up, I'll just give a little bit of background. Earlier this year, we did a community survey that asked a pretty wide-reaching list of questions about community priorities, and this is in follow-up. We've been doing the surveys for a couple of years now, and this is just the latest follow-up earlier this spring. So the survey identified a whole list of things that are important to the community, and we followed it up in June and early July with basically taking the top 5 priorities from that wide-reaching survey that was done earlier this year, and asked people of these top 5, what do you guys think of these priorities, and how would you prioritize them? And so to get the survey out, we sent a mailer out to all the residential utility customers. We also posted it on our city website so people could take a survey monkey online. And then on the utility newsletter that we sent out just early July here, we also reminded people of the survey and directed them to the website to fill it out. And the questions that we asked people to prioritize were maintaining local 911 emergency dispatch and the police department services, maintaining domestic violence response services, preparing for emergencies and natural disaster response, maintaining fiscal stability with locally controlled funding that cannot be taken by the state, and finally fixing potholes and repairing streets to improve safety for walkers, cyclists, drivers, and also local first responders. So the staff report in this chart that's on the screen right now are it's about 82 responses to date, which was basically through the 4th of July weekend. And we've continued to get even more responses now, which we'll continue adding to this and ultimately posting it to the city website. How it ended up, but I can tell you, even with the additional response, so the chart that you're seeing now is the same theme that is continuing even with newer responses received after the packet was published. And basically, in the survey, people are asked to rank through priorities. One, as you can see from the chart label on the vertical axis, that if you rank the item 1, that's your highest priority. If you rank it 5, that's your lowest priority. And this is consistent with the broader surveys that we've done of the community, and it's also consistent here with this more focused prioritization of top priorities. And that is the community desire to maintain local 911 emergency dispatch and police services. So that remains a consistent theme across all the polls we've done in multiple years. What's kind of new is preparing for emergencies and natural disasters. And we saw that in the survey in the springtime, the more comprehensive survey. And it continues to show up even here. So there's probably little doubt why that is on people's minds right now with the, couple consecutive large fires in the county, plus the public safety power shutoff. The last, that really was pretty pronounced last year, and it looks like it's going to continue for a while. So that's definitely forefront in people's minds. Probably shouldn't be surprising. And then third was maintaining fiscal stability with locally controlled funding that cannot be taken. You see it in the surveys. You also see it in a lot of the comments where there's a really strong sense of fiscal independence that the community has. So they want to make sure that we can rely on ourselves, and we don't rely on, the state, for example, to keep us going. And so that local funding still seems to be a high priority. For obvious reasons, and when we first started asking this question was right around the start of the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, and it was particularly acute at that time because of the state trying to solve their own budget issues, taking it from local governments, and including Cotati, of course. So you know, but even 12 years later, that's still a, you know, something that's on people's minds as a real, you know, priority for them to make sure that we can take care of ourselves. So self-reliance, I categorize that as. And then fixing potholes and repairing streets. I think, you know, as we're seeing through the different surveys, and this is particularly with the narrative comments that were also included with these surveys, that people are definitely noticing the street work that's happening. And I mean, as you know, you all have been investing significant amounts of money in streets to try to bring up the pavement condition index and get them to a point where they're far less expensive to maintain. It's just, you know, I think many of you have stated on numerous occasions, it's just much more fiscally responsible to keep the infrastructure in good condition to begin with, because repairing something that's broken is a lot more expensive than keep just maintaining something that's in good shape. And then finally, maintaining domestic violence response services. This is important. I mean, we see it in the broader surveys that this is an important service that the police department provides, but I think in the context of this prioritization of these top priorities, I think most people probably couldn't distinguish, and you even saw it in some of the narrative comments, they couldn't distinguish between police services, emergency and police services, and domestic violence. So it seems that people were assuming that if there's local 911 emergency dispatch and police services, that it would by default. So I think that's why it ended up just being ranked last in this particular prioritization. The other thing that I will say is there, with respect to the narrative comments, there were quite a few comments left regarding the police and how they're doing, and mostly, as you can see from the numeric rankings, mostly very supportive, but some not also. And I think with just the discussion going on nationally, there was, maybe a little bit more narrative responsiveness than we might see in a typical survey. And then finally, with respect to streets, and again, this is on the narrative side of things, speeding seems to be a common theme as well. People don't appreciate drivers speeding down their streets, and so they pointed out. And it was also interesting, there was a variety of maybe some specific kind of things related to, hey, there's no street light on this corner, or things like that. So we have started the process of reaching out to these people that had responded and wanted to be contacted. So we started that, and soon we'll be also, I'll be sending this out to some of the departments to follow up on some of the more specific items related to the areas that people had asked questions about. And then in the staff report, there are some of the narrative comments are just provided verbatim in the staff report, and this is really just intended to show the full spread, the full spectrum of comments. It's nothing other than that, other than just to kind of give the reader the sense of sort of one end to the other with respect to people's thoughts on some of the issues. And then lastly, I'll just say that attached to it were just all of the comments listed by, they were just categorized by whether the comments were received on SurveyMonkey, or the last category is just people that sent in forms with comments but didn't provide any rankings. So it was a big group. And like I said earlier, we'll continue to update this for the next week or two. We'll just get it all posted on the city websites. If anyone's curious, they can look at it. So with that, I would be happy to answer anybody's questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank thank you for that. For some reason, your audio is coming in and out a little bit, but I think we caught everything you were saying. But just giving you a heads up. No, that's okay. Just meant we had to pay attention a little bit more. So let me first bring it back to the council and see whether there are any questions for our city manager. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. So we'll open it up for our attendees, see if anybody has any public comments on the community survey that was presented. So I'll turn it over to our city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. And at this time, I see no hands raised.
Okay, well, thank you for checking. And I will just check one more time if there are any comments. Oh, I see Councilmember Harvey has your hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember Harvey.
I really appreciated the sheer number of comments that we got. You know, a lot of times when people fill out surveys, you know, they rank the things, but there isn't enough detail behind what their intent is. And I really, really appreciated the amount of detail and time that people took into explaining why they chose things the way they did and what was working and what wasn't working, and when things were a toss-up, why they felt they were a toss-up. And, you know, I just, it was really such a wealth of information. So thank you to the citizens that replied, and thank you for the thoughtful input. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And I see Councilmember Lamon, you've got your hand up, so please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with my colleague, Councilmember Harvey. I was really pleased when I saw the number of responses. I thought it was pretty large. And more than that, I really appreciated the depth of thought that so many put into the responses. Clearly, people put some thought into this and had a pretty good idea. I think of some of the challenges we face in trying to provide these services, how they all interconnect, really. So I thought that was really helpful. And perhaps the most interesting thing is that there wasn't anything terribly surprising, even considering this very uncertain and surprising times we're living in, that the responses really kind of tracked what we've been doing for the last 6, 7 years or so. And I mention that because I think it's really a good thing. To me, at least, it kind of indicates we're in the right track, providing the community with the services that it wants, that it needs. So I really appreciate it. I think this series of being responsive to the public and checking in with them on an ongoing basis has been very valuable. All that's left now is the challenge of continuing to actually provide those services and even hopefully improve on them potentially in the future. So that will be the next place to go. But thank you very much for that report.
All right, thank you. And I see Councilmember DeLasso. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Skillman. I don't really want to sound like a yes man, but I do agree with what my previous two council members have also stated. I noticed kind of an overall theme in a number of these comments was support for safety. And that can go in a lot of different directions, but even the comments that said, you know, we want to look at the updating of the police manual. I mean, it seemed like those comments, which are very helpful and which we're, you know, going to be having this great discussion next week on all of this, was still in a very positive light, and I was very appreciative of that. So, yeah, I just think, you know, the time that the public who took the survey, the time that they took to actually add a written comment really does say a lot. And I think this is really important for council and staff to hang on to for next spring when we do our annual strategic planning, that this might be not necessarily a guidepost, but certainly some starting points for some of the issues. And as Councilmember Landman said, you know, now the challenge is, you know, let's keep let's keep going in the right direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I see Vice Mayor Moore. You've got your hand up, so please go ahead, Vice Mayor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Skillman. I would just echo pretty much the same thing as the other council members. It's nice to get the input from the community and to kind of get a yardstick measurement of what we're doing right, maybe what we need to improve. And I did appreciate the fact that our city manager, Obed, was talking about keeping that survey open, and I'm wondering how long you plan on keeping that, or will that be an ongoing dialogue, so to speak? Thank you.
Council Member Moore, so this survey, we were going to keep it up at least through this week and then just roll in the rest of the comments. We wanted to give people a little bit of time after receiving the utility bill mailer to hop on SurveyMonkey and fill it out. But what we're thinking is this basically the end of this week, and then we'll roll in all the final stuff to the website.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I see Councilmember Harvey. You've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to thank staff for reaching out to those that had very specific issues, because I think that that's also helpful, and it also will keep people engaged and know that if they have a specific problem, that staff will reach out to them and try and help solve it. So thank you for that.
All right, yes, thank you for the presentation and for putting this together and reaching out to the public to get their input. And thank you also to everyone who took the time to fill out the survey and express their concerns. So I appreciate that this is a two-way street. Okay, so with that, we will go to item 12, the City Manager's report. For that, we will turn back to City Manager Obed.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So it's been busy. I'll start with the obvious one, which is the new restrictions that were just put in place starting Monday. So this is the state health department now. The prior health orders were from the county health officer, of course. But this particular order is from the State Department of Public Health. So the new restrictions, the restrictions as of Monday morning were really focused on indoor activities and prohibiting indoor activities that bring people into prolonged contact with each other that aren't part of the same household. And the business types that were identified as not being allowed to operate indoor any longer are restaurants, wineries, tasting rooms, bars, clubs, breweries, brew pubs, and distilleries, movie theaters, family entertainment centers, and the examples given were bowling alleys and arcades, zoos and museums, and card rooms. And it did still allow limited outdoor services, so like outdoor dining and takeout service was still allowed. Winery tasting rooms were still allowed to operate outdoor, even though they could not be operated indoor any longer. Bars, clubs, breweries, brew pubs, and distilleries could serve alcohol outdoors, but only with a meal. So in other words, essentially acting like a restaurant serving alcohol. And this order from the state came because the number of the coronavirus data during didn't improve over the prior 72-hour monitoring period. So on Friday, we went into a monitoring period, which ended Sunday. And specifically, Sonoma County, the rate of infections per 100,000 residents is one of the state criteria they use to gauge how counties are doing. In Sonoma County, that infection rate increased sixfold from 20 cases in early June, more than 120 on July 12th, which is what triggered getting put on the monitoring list, and then finally the restrictions that were imposed essentially on midnight on Monday morning. And then, not to be done there, a little bit after noon on Monday, July 13th, so about 14 hours later, the state issued additional new restrictions for Sonoma County and 29 other counties that are on the state monitoring list. And again, in the effort statewide to slow the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus. And the new restricted new restrictions required closures of indoor gyms and fitness centers, hair salons, worship services, and malls. Those restrictions are slated to be in place for, I believe it's 3 weeks, so that would be August 2nd. So in other words, even if our infection rate improves between now and August 2nd, those restrictions will stay in place until August 2nd, unless the state takes some other action. If our infection rate has improved, in theory, on August 2nd, those restrictions could be eased again, but it's kind of a wait and see now. Also, related to the world of the COVID response, something that may have just been obvious if you're out shopping, but you didn't give it much thought, was that the state had suspended, through an executive order, California's plastic bag ban, including charging for single-use paper bags. So you may have noticed when you're shopping, for example, that they don't want you to bring in your reusable bags, and grocery stores provided, say, paper bags for people, typically free of charge. And that was a 60-day suspension, as I mentioned, and it also suspended our local carry-out bag ordinance, which was put in place countywide in 2014. But starting June 18th, that temporary suspension was lifted. So, in other words, shoppers are able now to once again bring in reusable bags for shopping, but customers are going to be required to bag their own purchases. And other sort of general guidelines along this on this topic are to further limit exposure to grocery store or retail employees. It's recommended that customers leave their bags inside a cart or basket and don't place them on high-touch surfaces such as checkout counters or conveyor belts. And it's also recommended to wash bags between uses. So, in other words, keep it in your shopping cart, bag it yourself, don't put it on the conveyor belt or the checkout counter. And if you don't bring reusable bags to the grocery store, then it appears that the 10-cent per bag charge is back in effect now. You use bags from the store. All right, so as we talked about earlier, there's just a reminder, there's a community discussion on police policies. It's scheduled for July 22nd at 6 p.m. It's a Zoom meeting. So please keep an eye out on this, for this agenda on the city website, or contact Lauren Burgess, the city clerk, to be added to the agenda mailing list. Reminders will also be published in the Community Voice as well as city social media and on the downtown marquee. And the website, even though I forgot to mention that. And then police officers are hosting their regular beat area officer meetings the first week of August, and this will be a Zoom-based meeting. So notices of the meetings will be going out shortly on social media and on the police website. Look for that as well. And it's sort of a new format. Before, those meetings were in person, but it's a different world now. So we're trying to get participation and get input from our neighborhoods in a safe and accessible way. In terms of projects, so right now we're in the second week of the bidding period for the 2020 Streets Paving Project, and the proposed project area is the named streets, so Henry, Page, Arthur, so forth, the ring roads, as well as adjacent city parking lots and part of Valparaiso there by West Sierra Avenue. And this is, as we talked about during the budget process, this is a B project, so it is contingent on the bid amounts and the revenue actuals that we discussed earlier. But there does continue to be a healthy amount of interest in city projects, especially now. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for low bids when we open bids on July 28th. The original full project had some additional roads like La Plaza and West Sierra Avenue, and we're also getting those ready in the event that any federal infrastructure money becomes available. So that could be potentially a second phase if there's additional funding becomes available. Wayfinding signs, Well, you heard in public comment earlier tonight, wayfinding signs are going up around the city, and this project remains on track to be completed by the end of July. So look for those. I'm seeing them pop up all over the place as well. So we're getting there. And then the Fleddy Ranch House improvements are nearly complete. The interior was painted today, and flat work, which is the driveway and the ADA parking area improvements, as well as relocating the internal fencing, are expected. So we have about 2 more weeks to be substantially complete with this work. And I watch it every day out my window, so it's coming along nicely. It's looking really good. And then a pre-construction meeting was held today for the long-awaited West School Street Pathway project. This project is slated to start on Monday and has secured 3 years' worth of community development block grant funding as well as city matching funds. And then the William Olaf Sewer Replacement Project began on July 6th, and completion there is expected in early August. And the PG&E the PG&E work in front of La Plaza Park is underway, as you've probably seen if you've driven through there, and is expected to extend into mid to late August. So that's it for projects, but I will also say, in addition to the COVID response and public information activities, we're also preparing for public safety power shutoffs. So they're continuing to move along. The city has its own towable fuel tank and a replacement towable generator for the sewer lift stations that we've received earlier this summer. We also did some electrical work to City Hall to provide some additional redundancy to our city file servers so that they're on full generator backup. And the city crews, if you've been around, the city crews are installing reflective backing on the signal shrouds. These are traffic signal shrouds, which is intended to provide some additional safety during power outages. The reflective taping, of course, would, at nighttime make the signals, even if they're dark, visible, so people know they're approaching a signalized intersection. And city crews are doing this with the bucket truck, in fact, that was recently purchased, which allows them to reach those mastheads, and saving about $20,000 in the process rather than having to contract it out to a third party. And then finally, secondary failover internet connections are also going up shortly, again, to add some additional redundancy during power outages and whatever else Mother Nature may throw at us. So that's it on the public works realm. As you know, we've also been working on some redevelopment bond tax refunds. So these are the bond refunds, and we got those refunded, at least preliminarily, and approved by DOF, and they were placed privately at a much better rate than we were expecting for. When we brought this to council originally, we were expecting around a 5%. We currently have a 5% rate on the bonds as they exist today. We thought they would be, I think, more in the 3% range after they got refunded because of the better interest rates today. In fact, we ended up getting about a 1.3% interest rate, which is unheard of. So this low interest rate frees up significant property tax that will benefit the community. Primarily the school district and the county of Sonoma are the primary beneficiaries, but the city also does share 10% of the property tax, so we also benefit too. But we'll be talking more about this on July 28th when we bring this back to the city council meeting. Utility bills are out. They're due by August 10th. And if customers are having trouble paying bills, we now have forms online that allow customers to easily pull to pay, and also allow customers easy 24/7 access to request water and sewer deferments or financing. And we're also, in addition to that, offering telephone-based options to make a payment. Check on your account balance or confirm any updated due dates. You can just dial 833-282-0825. And then lastly, just some recreation news. This is the 6th week of the sold-out Camp Katati summer camp. Campers and staff continue to follow extra safety precautions or following all the recommendations from the CDC regarding summer camps. So while we operate a little differently than we used to, campers have still been enjoying their time off from school by playing, learning, making friends, making crafts. They've also been creative in ways to give back. Earlier this summer, the camps hosted a lemonade stand and raised about $140 for new toys for children in some of the area hospitals here. Last week, they held a plant sale to raise money for an animal shelter, and we're looking forward to more projects like this throughout the summer. At the end of this month, end of July, we will have a gymnastics camp there, and there's still space to sign up if anyone's interested in that. At the end of the month, Monday, July 27th, an organization, Food for Thought, will be hosting a drive-through food drive at the Ray Miller Community Center behind City Hall from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Non-perishable food items will be accepted during this drive-through event. Food for Thought provides food for those in need throughout Sonoma County with HIV and other serious illnesses. So we're, of course, happy to partner with them as they continue their good work in the community. Farmers market season continues to take place each Wednesday afternoon in La Plaza Park, 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. There are multiple fresh fruit and vegetable vendors, many that I've hit up numerous times, and my kids love it for sure. There's hot food options, handmade goods, and more, and the market will continue to operate through the end of August. And then also through the summer, the Redwood Empire Food Bank's summer lunch program at the Ray Miller Community Center behind City Hall. So each weekday throughout the summer, anyone age 18 or under can pick up the grab-and-go lunch between noon and 12:30. There's no paperwork or RSVP required, and they drop the supplies off once a week, and our city staff are able to organize it and man the event, the food pickup each day. So it's been a good partnership that's continued just in a modified format this year. And then, of course, just the usual reminder, you can sign up for all our camps on our city website. For more information on city programs and events, please contact Patrick Wilson, 665-4222, or awilson@kentuckycity.org. And you always can get the latest information on our website at kentuckycity.org or the city's Facebook and pages. So, with that, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Councilmember Delasso has your hand up, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I do want to echo a couple of times now that's been said about the wayfinding signs, and all the ones that I've seen so far do look really good. So thank you for that work that's been going on. Damien, I have a question for you regarding the newest health order. I know a month or so ago, we had brought up the idea of, and I believe it was Noah that made the presentation, of expanding some of the downtown business footprints into the street and actually having some street closures. And I know that it was kind of a lukewarm reception, I think, from what I had heard from staff. But I'm just wondering now, there's no indoor dining whatsoever. Do you have any kind of a feeling that maybe there'll be a little bit more interest on some of the downtown businesses for this?
Yeah, so I'll let Noah jump in a second if he has anything to add. But I think, the first time, right when we initially made that available as an option, it was right when the county in particular was really accelerating the reopening. And I think, and businesses were trying to get their staff back, their serving staff to be able to do table service, because up to that point they'd been doing mostly to go over to the delivery type services. And I think I get the sense that the perspective at the time was that things are, rapidly moving towards more open, being more open, more flexibility in operations. And so there wasn't a lot of demand. There was some inquiries, but there wasn't a lot of solid demand on moving businesses out sidewalks or street. I will say, though, with everything, all the indoor dining and so forth being shut down again, we've been in touch with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has made a renewed push. We're also making a renewed push just to make sure people are aware of the options. I think there's at least one business that I know of, I think, has reached out to NOAA to start exploring some additional outdoor options. But I would expect that there may be some more interest this time. given that.
Yeah, I would think so too, especially from the dining option. You know, people, some of the businesses, I remember hearing from them that, you know, well, we just don't have the staff to accommodate additional tables. Well, these are no longer additional tables. They're probably still fewer than what they would have inside. So, yeah, hopefully they'll be able to take advantage of this. So thank you for that reply. I appreciate it. No, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had anything.
I would just echo City Manager Obed's comments in that we are anticipating trying to almost remind folks, just given how chaotic and ever-changing some of the recent past few weeks have been. We want to do a new push, partnering with the Chamber to almost remind folks that these options are out there. And we do think as some of the unemployment changes affect folks' incomes and kind of combined with the ongoing changes to dining, that there will be more interest. And we are starting to get some inquiries from folks other than just restaurants. So some of our fitness businesses are interested in using spaces, public spaces, for some of their classes. And we're working to facilitate all of those things. And everyone has been really appreciative, but I do anticipate seeing a little bit more interest in the opportunities that we have for folks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with both of you. All right, thank you guys very much, and thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely, and I'm not seeing any other hands up. So why don't we move on to the city council member reports. I'll start off and let you know that I do not have anything to report out this week. And then I will just go on down the line. I'll check. Vice Mayor Moore, did you have anything you needed to report out this week?
No, I do not, Mayor Skillman. I have a Reverend Umpire Municipal Insurance Fund meeting next week, and so I anticipate I'll have something further on that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And Councilmember Harvey, have you got anything to report out?
I actually have nothing to report out, and I have a meeting of the Waste Management Agency tomorrow, so next time.
Excellent. Okay. Councilmember Landman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Skillman. One thing to report out. I should report from SCTA. You might have seen in the newspaper. We had our meeting yesterday afternoon, and the SCTA board did vote to go forward with Go Sonoma, which is a continuation of the existing Measure M for the 2020 ballot, with a unanimous vote save Windsor dissenting. So basically, to make a long story short, we revisited it. As you know, we had looked back in September 2019 to see what support there might be in public, and had pretty good response of about 73% indications of support, ranging from strong to probably supporting. Taken now July 6th through 9th, so clearly in the new world that we're living in, it stayed pretty good at about 75%. Statistically, it's the same, but it does sound a little better with that extra 2%. It should be noted, though, that there's some evidence of the nervousness about COVID in this, so that there's a slightly bigger softness. And they define softness as when you show people exposure to opposition language, negative language, trying to convince somebody to vote against it. That always moves the number down a little. That has increased a little bit compared to last time, so it shows that there is some uncertainty in the public, but overall there's still some general interest. And I guess I'd conclude by saying it was pretty obvious to everybody on the board, and I think it's pretty clear to many in the public, a great many in the public, that the benefits from maintaining local roads and being a self-help county are really clear. And we can see that deferred maintenance just equals vastly increased costs down the road. We know that in our personal lives. I'll admit to that. And it's the same versus cities and counties. And also that as far as being a self-help county, if we're not a self-help county, we can't get our share of federal and state dollars for roads and infrastructure. And the potential for infrastructure, even from the feds next year, is quite possible. So we'd like to have that. So despite this not being the best time in the world with this totally amazing pandemic, this election probably is still the best time to go forward with something like this compared to any other opportunity we have. So we're going to be putting this on the ballot, and we will see what the public thinks then.
Okay, great, thank you. And Councilmember Delasso, did you have anything to report out?
I do, for a change. So sit back and here we go. Let's start with just a personal comment that I am so happy that the city of Cotati does not allow fireworks, because I have a dog who was shaking so hard the entire night and for a day on either side of that, that it's an awful thing to see animals go through this. And with the fires that we've had in Sonoma and the surrounding counties the last few years, you would think that hopefully the city of Rohnert Park may someday actually ban those things, because of course our boundary abuts. So I'm very glad to be in Cotati during those times. I do want to say, because I don't remember if I did report out on this, I may have, but just very quickly, on June 19th, I did meet with Marjorie and with Adrian Lobby and their group, and had a discussion with them, so that was very good, very pleasant. Now, Ag and Open Space, our monthly Ag and Open Space meeting, in between our two council meetings, I actually sent an email to all of the advisory committee members asking them to think really hard about their time commitments. From January of 2019, I went back and looked at all the meetings to see who was there and who wasn't there. There had been a total, I believe, of 11 meetings since we had missed March through May of this year as well. And there were some committee members that of those 11 meetings had missed 6, 7, even 8. And I really feel that's unacceptable. And so my message to people, and a bunch of them did reply back to me, which was helpful. I wasn't asking anybody to step down, but I was asking people to reassess their commitment to Sonoma County Ag and Open Space. I said, we're doing some incredible work for the long term of this county, for recreational opportunities, the continuation of agricultural use, which made this county. And so it was kind of a tough note. It took me about a week and a half to actually write it. But once I got it done and I passed it through the director, I sent it to everybody. And amazingly enough, we had only one person miss our last Zoom meeting, so I thought that was special. But anyway, it was one of those things that needed to be done. And I did briefly, at our last update, I talked a little bit about the Carrington Ranch out in the Bodega, a little bit north of Bodega. But some more information on that. So the Board of Supervisors did authorize the transfer of the property, and a little over 300 acres, a historic dairy. Back in 2003, it was $4.8 million was spent to purchase those 330 plus acres. And it has this may not interest too many of you, but a maternal roost of Placotis townsendii, which is the Townsend's big-eared bat. And so in the historic structure where these are our California endangered species, they're not on the National Register, but they have a roosting colony of close to 100 of these bats, and that's a pretty special thing. And if you don't like bats, you can just kind of ignore that last statement, I guess. But I also sent an update to the Mayors and Council Members Association of the highlights from that meeting. So by now you should have gotten that and had an opportunity to read it. I also attended a memorial for Rick Stewart on the 28th of June. Rick, as we all know, operated after his father left the Arches Glass. And Rick, suddenly passed away just a few weeks back now, or maybe about a month and a half ago now. So I did attend that because I had known them for a long time. And the last statement I really want to make is to everybody out there listening, even if you're listening to this tomorrow or the next day or the next week, please, 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 when you go out in public, wear a face covering and keep the social distancing. We have an opportunity to get back to normal, but it's really up to us. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you for your comments. And with that, and I guess I should amend my previous statement, I did also get a chance to meet with actually both of our attendees here tonight from the core group. So anyway, really appreciate their time and setting that up, and glad that we could exchange some information between all of us. So with that, we can move on to item 14, which is public comment on non-action agenda items. And I'll ask our city clerk, could you please check with our two attendees and see whether they had any comments on any non-action agenda items?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And for our attendees tonight, just remember to use your raise hand icon or dial *9. And at this time, I see no raised hands.
Okay, well, thank you very much for checking. And then for item 15, I would just ask our city clerk, was there any information received after the agenda had been posted?
No items received.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I will unexpectedly adjourn our meeting at a much earlier time than I had originally anticipated at 8:11 p.m. Thank you all so much for your time and attending tonight, and we will see you, either some of you next week, otherwise in 2 weeks from now. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe, and please do keep wearing your mask and social distancing, doing what we can to slow this down. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.